Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Plato's Republic, Book One. Today we're looking at the debate of Thrasymachus. Thrasymachus will interrupt Polemarchus and start his own attack on Socrates. This will go between what is it? Uh, 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 this conversation of Socrates, and it'll get interrupted for a short time. We're looking at the first round, and this is 336b to 347a on the Stephanus page numbers here. So this is where we're looking at it. So therefore, like this, let's continue. This is where it was at B. Thrasymachus, and when Thrasymachus many times, even while we were in the middle of our conversation, was making motions to take over the argument, he was prevented by those sitting by him who wanted to hear the arguments out. In other words, Thrasymachus is like, no, I want to say something, and others holding him back, right? Thrasymachus is this energy, like he wants to interrupt the damn thing, and they prevented him from letting the argument out. But when we paused, as I said this, he could no longer keep still, but having gathered himself like a spring, like a wild animal, he launched himself at us as if to tear us to pieces. Both I and Thrasymachus were quaking in fear as he, snarling into our midst, said, "What drivel are you people full of now, Socrates? And why do you act like idiots, kowtowing to each other? But if you truly want to know what's just, don't merely ask them and then, if it benefits someone with a passion for honor, cross examine whenever anybody answers, knowing that it's easier to ask than to answer. But also answer yourself and tell us what you claim the just thing is." So, for example, this is Socrates, it's so much easier for you just to tear apart people's points. You don't answer yourself, so why don't you put up a shut up, Socrates? Tell us what you said, right? And he goes, and I don't give, and don't give me any of that about how it is needful or beneficial or profitable or the gainful or the advantageous. But tell me clearly and precisely what you mean, since I won't stand for it if you talk in such empty words. So therefore, he said, in other words, what is justice? What is justice? And I was flabbergasted when I heard this. And I was afraid, as if I looked at him, and it seemed to me that if I had not seen him before he saw me, I would have been struck dumb, right? Been struck dumb. Before, this is like, it alludes to the ancient legends about wolves, right? Wolves that you struck dumb. This is easy, but being said, basically, he's being set upon as a metaphor, right? This is the old saying about this. I've not seen him before. I would have been struck dumb. Like, how you being set by a wolf. The Thrasymachus now acts like a wolf, right? This wild animal that's jumping at you and like this, right? But as it was, just as he was beginning to be driven wild by the argument, I looked at him first, and so I was able to answer him and said, trembling a little, "Don't be rough on us, Thrasymachus. If we're mistaken in any point in the examination of the argument, I and this fellow here, you can be assured that we're going astray unwillingly. For don't even imagine when, if we are looking for gold, when wouldn't we be willing to kowtow to each other in search and ruin our chances of finding it? That is, we're looking for justice, a thing more valuable than gold. We'd be so senseless as to defer to each other and not be serious as possible about bringing it to light. Um, don't don't so much as imagine that friend, but I imagine we don't have the power to find it. We don't have the power to find it. So it's much more fitting for us to be pitted by you clever people, instead of being roughed up. In other words, pitied by you clever people. It's better to be pitied by you if since we don't know what it is. And can't be finding it. Instead of roughing us up, you should pity us, right? And hearing this, he burst out laughing with great scorn. Oh, Hercules, this is routine irony of Socrates. Okay, F5. This is like, no. The word here refers to the gracious self-depreciation way of speaking that was specifically for Socrates. It would not be applied to Thrasymachus' own scornful sarcasm. It was his giving sarcasm, so scornful sarcasm. I knew about this, and I kept telling these people before you wouldn't be willing to answer. But you'd be ironic and everything else, but answer anyone who asked you anything. That's because you're wise, Thrasymachus, I said. So you know very well that if you ask anyone how much 12 is, and by determining and in asking demanded of him in advance, don't give me that don't give me any of that, fellow, about how 12 is 2 times 6 or 3 times 4 or 6 times 2 um, or 4 times 3, since I don't stand for such dribble as you. It was clear to you, I imagine, that no one could answer someone who interrogated him that way. But if he said to you, Thrasymachus, how do you mean it? That I must give none of the answers you prohibited in advance, not even you, strange fellow, if it happens to be one of these. Be, but instead, I have to say something other than the truth. In other words, I can't use these that you gave me, you printed me, because maybe that's the truth, and you're going to have to say something other than this because, and therefore, say some other than truth. Or how do you mean it? What would you say to him about that? Thrasymachus, oh, sure. As if this was like that. Nothing prevents it, I said, but even then, if it isn't like it, but perhaps to be someone who is asked such a question, do you imagine he'll any less answer the question the way it appears to him, whether we forbid it or not? So what else? He said. Are you going to do the same thing? Are you going to give any of those answers I banned? I wouldn't be surprised, I said, if it seemed that way to me when I had examined it. Then what if I show you a different answer about justice? He says, okay, you're going to be those answers. What if I show you a different answer? Beyond those all these better than they are. Beyond all these other answers, better than they are. What penalty would you deserve to suffer? What other penalty, I said, than the one it's fitting for someone who doesn't have knowledge to suffer? Is it fitting, no doubt, for him to learn from someone who has knowledge? So I think I too deserve to suffer this penalty. You're amusing, he said, but in addition to learning, pay a penalty in money too? Okay, whatever. Whenever I get any, he said. He's got it, said Glaucon, so far as money is concerned. Thrasymachus, speak up, since all of us will chip in for Socrates. I imagine you will, he said. So Socrates can go on with his usual routine. He won't answer when somebody else answers. He'll grab hold of his statement and then cross-examine him. Most skillful one, I said. How could anyone give an answer who, in the first place, doesn't know and doesn't claim to know? And then, even if he supposes something about these things, would be banned from saying what he believed by no inconsiderable man. Uh, but it is so. It's more like if you. It is more like so it's more like it for you to speak, since you claim to know and have something to say, right? So it's, I don't know. You're gonna, even if I did say something, you're gonna say I can't use the ones that. This is kind of a, this is. I can sympathize with Thrasymachus here. This is frustration. Socrates would get under your skin because I don't know. Then shut the fuck up, Socrates. This is why Socrates got justly killed. I agree, Kendall, Socrates versus the Athenians. Socrates was justly killed. Um, um, because he pissed everyone off. And this is how he pisses people off. Uh, uh, so it's more like you speak, since you claim to know and have something to say. So so don't do anything else but gratify me by answering. And don't be grudging about teaching Glaucon here as well as the others. So for do some teach me and teach Glaucon as well to begrudging this. And when I say these things, Glaucon, and when I said these things, Glaucon, the others kept begging him not to do otherwise. And Thrasymachus was obviously longing to speak in order to be well thought of. So in other words, he wants to be well thought of. So therefore, they're begging him to, okay, do it, speak, go do it, answer, do what Socrates asked you to do. And he wants to please them. He wants to please them, right? This is why, he's the demagogue, right? He's please them. In order to be spoken, believing that he had an answer of overwhelming beauty. In other words, notice overwhelming beauty, not nobility, but beauty in that sense. I think this is I think this is a noble, not noble, but I think it's kalos, something kalos in that sense. It's something beautiful in that sense. But he made a pretense of battling eagerly for me to be the one that answered. But making an end of this, he gave way and then said, this is the wisdom of Socrates. He himself is not willing to teach, but he goes about learning from others, and he doesn't even pay them with any gratitude. Well, that's the wisdom. This is the wisdom of Socrates. He goes, this is the joke. He ends up with this idea. This is the wisdom of Socrates. He doesn't, in other words, he is not willing to teach, but he goes around learning from others, and he doesn't even pay them with gratitude, right? And in saying that I learned from others, Socrates says, you tell the truth, Thrasymachus, but when you claim that I don't pay for it in full gratitude, you lie. For I pay all that is in my power. I have the power only to show appreciation, since I have no money. And how eagerly do I do this if anyone seems to me to speak well? You know very well, right away when you answer, for I imagine you speak well, right? Then listen, I will assert that what is just is nothing other than what is advantageous to the stronger. So why don't you show appreciation? But you won't be willing to. So justice is what is advantageous to the stronger. First, I need to understand what you mean, I said, since now I don't yet know. You claim that what is advantage to the stronger is just. Now, whatever do you mean by this, Thrasymachus? For surely you are not saying this sort of thing, that if Polydamas, the no holds bar wrestler, is stronger than we are, the bull meat is advantageous for him, for his body, this food would also be advantageous and at the same time just for us who are weaker than he. You're nauseating, Socrates, and you grab hold of this statement in this way that you can do it the most damage. Not at all, most excellent man. I say, Socrates, just say more clearly what you mean. So you don't know, he said, that some cities are run tyrannically, some democratically, and some aristocratically. How could I not? And so this prevails is strength in each city, the ruling part, the plutuma, right? Certainly. And each ruling power, each plutuma, sets up laws for the advantage of itself. A democracy setting up democratic ones, tyrannical ones, and the others likewise. And having set them up, they declare this: what is advantageous for them is just for those who are ruled, and they chastise someone who transgresses them as lawbreakers, and a person doing injustice. So this you most skillful one is what I'm saying, that the same thing is just in all cities, what is advantageous to the established ruling power, and this surely prevails in strength. So the conclusion for someone who reasonably is correct is the same thing as that the same thing is just everywhere. that what's advantageous to the stronger, just as what is advantageous to the stronger. Now I understand what you mean, but whether it's true or not, we'll try to learn. So you too answer that the advantageous is just. Thrasymachus, even though you made it a prohibition for me that I could not give this answer, though there is added to it for the stronger. A small addendum, no doubt, he said. This is just sarcasm. This is sarcasm. Yet it's not clear yet whether it's a big one. Yet it is clear that whether you're speaking the truth needs to be examined, since since you are saying, and I'm agreeing with what you have just said, agreeing that what is just is something advantageous, but you're making an addition and claiming that it be that of the stronger, while I don't know that, and it needs to be examined. So I don't know that it needs to be. You're saying we agree that the just is advantageous, but we're disagreeing about whether it's for the stronger. The stronger. Let's do it. So let's examine it, he said. That will be done. Sorry. Now tell me, do you not claim, though, that it is also just to obey the rulers? I do. And are the rulers in each city infallible, or the sort of people who also make mistakes? Oh, by all means. They're surely the sort of people who also make mistakes. So when they try to set up laws, they set up some correctly and others incorrectly. I, I certainly imagine so. Then to set them up correctly is to set up laws that are advantageous to themselves and incorrectly disadvantageous ones? Or how do you mean it? Well, that's the way. But whatever they set up needs to be done by those who are ruled, and this is what's called just. How could it be otherwise? Then, according to your statements, not only is it just to do what's advantageous to one, to what the stronger, but also to do the opposite, what's disadvantageous. What do you mean? He said. What do you mean? What you mean? It seems to me, but let me examine it better. Wasn't it agreed that when the rulers command those who are ruled to do certain things, they're sometimes completely mistaken about what's best for themselves, but what the ruler commands is just for those who are ruled to do so. Wasn't this agreed? I certainly imagine so. Well then, I said, imagine I imagine also that it was agreed by you that doing what's disadvantageous for those who rule and are stronger is just, and disadvantageous for those who rule and are stronger is just. Whenever the ruler unwillingly commands things that are bad for themselves, whether you claim that for others to do those things which they commanded is just. So then we, most wise Thrasymachus, responding to sarcasm with sarcasm, doesn't it turn out necessary in exactly this way, that it's just to do the opposite of what you say? For what is advantageous to the stronger is without doubt commanded to the weaker to do. By Zeus, yes, Socrates, says Polymarchus. But this is where Polymarchus interrupts, right? And if you're going to be the witness for him, Cleophon interjected. And what's need is there a witness? Thrasymachus himself agree. What is needed for witness? Thrasymachus himself agrees that the ruler sometimes commands things that are bad for themselves, and for the others to do command for themselves, and that for others to do these things is just. That's because Thrasymachus set down Polymarchus. That is because Thrasymachus set down Polymarchus, that doing what is ordered by rulers is just. Because he also set down Cleophon, what is advantageous to the stronger is just. And having set down both these things, he's agreed next that someone stronger, that sometimes the stronger orders things that are disadvantageous to themselves and to those who are weaker, and rule to do so. And from these agreements, what advantage to the stronger would be no more just than what's disadvantageous. Cleophon, but he means that the advantage of the stronger is what the stronger believes his advantage to himself. This is what needs to, in other words, this is what needs to be done by the weaker. He has set this down as what's just. But he didn't say it that way, Polymachus responds, right? It makes no difference, Polymachus, I said. But if Thrasymachus says it this way now, let's accept it. Let's accept it this way from him. Tell me, Thrasymachus, was this what you wanted to say? The just is what seems to be the stronger to the advantage of the stronger, whether it might be advantageous or not. Shall we say you mean it that way? That least of all, he said. Do you imagine that I call someone who makes a mistake stronger when he's making a mistake? I did imagine that what you're saying, Socrates says, when you agreed that rulers are not infallible but even completely mistaken about some things. That's because you're a liar who misrepresents things in the argument, Socrates. To start with, do you call someone who's completely mistaken about sick people a doctor on account that they of the very thing he's mistaken about? Or do you call someone skilled at arithmetic who makes a mistake doing arithmetic at the same time as he's making it on account of this mistake? I imagine instead that we talk that way in a manner of speaking, saying that the doctor made a mistake, or the one skilled at arithmetic made a mistake, or the grammarian. But I assume that each of these, to the extent that this is what we address him as, never makes a mistake. So that in precise speech, since you too are precise in speech, no skilled worker makes a mistake. For it's by being deficient in knowledge that one who makes a mistake makes it, in respect to which he is not a skilled worker. So no one who is a skilled worker or wise or a ruler makes a mistake at the time when he's a ruler. Though everyone says that the doctor made a mistake or the ruler made a mistake, take it then that I too was answering you just now in that sort of way. The most precise way of speaking is exactly this: that the one who rules, to the extent that a ruler, does not make mistakes, and in making a mistake, he sets himself he and by make and in not making a mistake, he sets himself up what is best for himself, and this needs to be done by the one who is ruled. And so I say the very thing I've been saying from just the beginning. I think is just to do what is advantageous to the stronger. Okay, Thrasymachus, I said, I see you. I seem to you to misrepresent things by lying. Very much so, because you imagine that I asked the question the way I did out of a plot to do you harm in the argument. I know that very well. And that's not going to do you any good, because you couldn't do me any harm without it being noticed. And without being unnoticed, you wouldn't have the power to do violence with the argument. I wouldn't even try, blessed me, Socrates says. But in order that this sort of thing doesn't happen as to us again, distinguish the way you mean someone who rules is stronger, whether it is the one who is called or the one who in precise speech, whom you just now mentioned, for those advantageous, since he is stronger, it will be just for the weaker to act. The one who is a ruler, in the most precise speech, he said, uh, do harm to that and misrepresent it by lies if you have any power to. I ask no mercy from you. I'll ask no mercy from you. But you won't be able to but you won't be able to. Do you imagine, I said, that I'm crazy enough to try to shave a lion or misrepresent the Thrasymachus by lies? You've certainly tried just now, but you were zero. But you were zero even at that. That's enough of this sort of thing, I said. But tell me, the doctor in precise speech that you were just talking about, is he a moneymaker or a healer of the sick? And speak about the one who is a doctor. Healer the sick, he said. And what about the helmsman? Is he the one who's a helmsman in a correct way, or as a ruler of sailors, or a sailor? A ruler of sailors. I assume there's no need to take into account that he does not sail in the ship, and the one for him to be called a sailor, since it is not account of sailing that he is called a helmsman, but on account of his art, his ruling position among the sailors. That's true, Thrasymachus says. And then for each of the latter, there's something advantageous, certainly. And isn't art by its nature for this? I said, for seeking and providing what's advantageous with each case? For that, he said. Then, then is there any advantage for each of the arts, other than to be complete as possible? In what sense are you asking this? In the same sense, I said, as if you were asking me whether it's sufficient for a body to be a body, or whether it needs something else extra. I'd say absolutely it needs to be something extra, and it is for that reason that the medical art has now been discovered, because the body is inadequate and it isn't sufficient to itself to be the sort of thing it is. So, if for this reason, in order that it might provide the things that are advantageous for the body, the art was devised. Would I seem to be speaking correctly in saying this, Socrates says, or not? It's correct. What then is the medical art itself, or any other art? What then is the medical art itself, or any other art inadequate? And is it the case that it has need for some extra virtue, just as eyes need sight and ears need hearing? And for these reasons, there needs to be some art applied to them that considers and provide what's advantageous for these things. Is there then an art that some inadequate? Is there an art in the? Is there then in the art itself some inadequacy in it too, and a need for each art to have another art that will consider what's advantageous for it? Or for the one that will consider that it is advantageous that to have another art in turn of that kind is and this is unending, or will it consider what's advantageous for itself? Or is there no additional need either for it or for any other art considered to consider what is advantageous for its inadequacy, because there's no inadequacy to mistake present in any art? Or is it appropriate for an art to look out for the advantageous of anything other than that which the art is concerned? But it itself is without defect and without impurity, since it is correct as each of as long as each it is correct, as long as each is the whole precise art that it is. Whew. This is like all this very complicated clause here in the complicated things, right? Consider it in that precise speech. Now, is this that the way is that the way it is, or in some other way? That's the way as it appears. So then I said the medical art considers what is advantageous not for the medical art, but for the body. Yes, he said. And for horsemanship, considers what advantageous not for the horse, but for horses. And neither does any other art considered advantageous for itself, since there's no extra need for that, but that for which the art is concerned. It appears so. But surely, Thrasymachus, the art rules over and has power over that which they are concerned. He went along with that too, very grudgingly. In other words, then no sort of knowledge considers or then no sort of knowledge considers or commands what advantageous for the stronger, but what's advantageous for the weaker and ruled by it. So therefore advantageous for the weaker and ruled by it. So therefore command. Therefore he's not that. And finally he agreed with this too, though he tried to make a fight about it. And when he agreed, I said, so does everything else follow except that no doctors, to the extent that he's a doctor, considers the command what's advantageous for the doctors, but instead for someone who's sick? Or for it is agreed that the doctor is precisely a ruler of bodies, not a moneymaker. Or was that not agreed? He said so. He said it was agreed. Then the helmsman, too, it was agreed to be precisely a ruler of sail, but not a sailor. It's agreed. Then the sort of helmsman and ruler at one weight will consider and command what's advantageous for the helmsman, but not what's advantageous for the sailor who is ruled. He said so grudgingly. Yeah, he said, yeah, Socrates. Grudgingly. Therefore, Thrasymachus, I said, neither will anyone else in the ruling position, to the extent he's a ruler, consider or command what's advantageous for himself, but what's advantageous for whatever is ruled. In other words, the famous. In other words, the just is. This is, and actually, this is the big thing. This is the big. This is the big difference between Socrates and Plato. Socrates and Plato versus Aristotle. In other words, the argument here is that. I'm repeating it. That he would never do it. That's for himself, right? But what is advantageous for whatever is ruled. For he is himself a skilled workman, and looking toward that and to this what's advantageous and appropriate for that, he both says and does everything that he says and does, right? Um, and this is the big difference. Socrates argues that, using the analogy of the arts, that art is done for the sake this art is done for the sake of the thing that it's to be done for, right? And therefore, justice must be done for the sake of the ruled, right? Not the ruler. Justice is not for the ruled, but for the ruler, but for the ruled. So the advantage of the benefit must benefit. The advantage is the benefit. Therefore, the ruler must benefit the ruler's rule, and if he's just, must benefit the ruled. Right? That's the analogy of the art. Aristotle says, no, sucker, no, it's common advantage, common good, common benefit. Just is therefore yes, you can, yes, if the ruler, yes, it's unjust that the ruler rules only for his sake, or rulers ruling for someone else's sake at the expense of others. But in that sense, but for the common purpose of the political, the analogy of the arts are false in Aristotle. Okay, this is the difference between Plato and Aristotle. Including Socrates, he uses the arguments of the arts to discredit, to destroy the Thrasymachus argument. Okay, and that Thrasymachus agrees to this. Thrasymachus should have objected, say, Socrates, no, it's not. You cannot use the analogy of the arts to this. But this is because the problem is, but he's done something else. See, in many ways, he accepts a binary choice that the just must benefit one or the other. And the Aristotelian point was, of course, it's going to benefit the ruler to some degree, because the ruler is a member of the community and it's supposed to benefit everyone. This is what the political rule is. It's not. Therefore, this is the difference between doing a thing towards a person and acting for the common benefit, ruling in that sense, political rule in that sense. So therefore, this is that point about this, right? And now, when we're just at the point of the argument, it was obvious to everyone that the statement about what just had turned around into the opposite, right? Thrasymachus, instead of replying, said, "Tell me, Socrates, do you have someone nursing you?" "What?" I said. "Shouldn't you give an answer rather than asking things like that?" I said, shouldn't you give an answer on it? Well, he said, she must not be noticing your snotty nose because she's not wiping it when you need her to. It's if it's her fault, you can't uh, tell a sheep from a shepherd. You can't tell a sheep. This is a, because because of what in particular, Socrates says, right? Because you imagine that shepherds and cattlemen consider the good of the sheep or cattle and fatten them up and take care of them, looking to do anything other than the good of their bosses and themselves. And so you also believe that the ruler in cities, the ones who are truly the rulers, think about those who are ruled in any other way than treat sheep, and that they could consider day or night or other things than this, how they themselves are going to benefit. Um, they are so far off about what's just and justice and what's unjust and injustice that you don't know what justice and what just are in fact someone else's are in fact someone else's good. What's advantageous for the person who's stronger and a ruler, the one who harms and the one who harms and one's own harm for the person who obeys and is subservient. Injustice is the opposite and rules over those who are truly simpletons and just people, while the ones who are ruled do what is advantageous for the person who's stronger and makes him happy by serving him, whereby but themselves are not in any but not in any way whatsoever, but themselves not in any way whatsoever. They don't serve themselves. It needs to be looked at this way, most simple-minded Socrates. A just man has less. A just man has less than an unjust one in every situation. First, he contracts with each other. Then, when the one is partnered with the other, nowhere would you find that the one who just had more in the breaking up of the partnership than the unjust one, with only less. Next, in things related to the city, wherever there are any taxes, the one who just pays more taxes on an equal amount of property, the other less, and whereas there are allotments, the former gains nothing, the later a lot. Also, whenever each of the two holds some ruling office, it goes without saying that the one who's just, even if he had no other loss, his household circumstances get into a sorry state from lacking attention, while on account of being just, he gets no benefit from the public treasury. On the top of that, he gets the antagonism of his family, the acquaintance, when he isn't willing to do them any service contrary to what is just. And for the one who's just, it goes without saying that everything is the opposite of this. I mean, this person, I mean, the person I was just talking about, the one who has the power to get a lot more who has the power to get a lot more than his due. So consider this person if you want to judge how much more unjust it is. In other words, unjust is to his private advantage than what is just. In other words, you'll understand this most easily if you go up to the most. You if you you'll understand this most easily if you go up to the most complete injustice, which makes the one who does the injustice the most happy, and the injustice is done to the most miserable, if they aren't willing to be unjust too. And this is tyranny, which by both uh, 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 furtiveness and force takes away what belongs to the other, both the sacred and the profane, both the private and the public, not little by little, but in all one swoop. When anyone who does injustice is in a single portion of that doesn't go undetected, he is punished and has even greater disgrace. Impious men, hijackers, home invaders, cheats, and thieves are names given to those who do the injustice involved in the parts of that sort of evil doing. But when someone, in addition to stealing the citizens' money, steals the men themselves and makes slaves of them, instead of these disgraceful names, he's called happy and blessed, owned by not only by the citizens but by everyone who hears that his injustice has been total injustice. Those who condemn injustice condemn it because they're afraid of doing unjust. In other words, they condemn it not because they're afraid of doing unjust things, but because they're afraid of suffering them. In this way, Socrates, this is the way, Socrates, that injustice, when it comes on the scene with sufficient strength, is stronger, more free, more overpowering than justice. And the way that the just is exactly what I am saying from the beginning, what's advantageous to the strong, and while the unjust is profitable and the advantageous to oneself. When he said these things, Thrasymachus had in mind to go away, just like a bath attendant who had sloshed a lot of speech into our ears at once. In other words, a tenant who had sloshed a lot of speech into our ears at once. But those who were present didn't let him go, but forced him to stay and submit to the discussion of the things he just said. And I too begged him very strongly and said, Thrasymachus, you supernatural being, what sort of speech have you flung at us, that you have had it in mind to go away before teaching us adequately or learning whether in some way or others? So, do you imagine it's a small matter to try to determine the course of a lifetime by which by which each of us who leads it would live the most profitable life? Do I imagine it any difference? You seem to, I said, or else not to be bothered at all, or else not to be bothered at all about us, or have any concern whether we live worse or better lives for being ignorant of what you claim to know. But, good fellow, be willing to display it to us too. It certainly won't be a bad deposit to your account that you did a good deed for us, so many that we are, because I'm telling you that for my part I'm not persuaded, nor do I suppose that injustice is more of a gain than justice, not even if it gives it its own way and doesn't hinder it from doing what it wants. But, good fellow, let someone be unjust, and let him have the power to do injustice, either by going undetected or by fighting his way through. He still doesn't persuade me that that's more of a gain than justice. Now, perhaps some other one of us, and I'm not alone, has gotten this impression. So persuade us, blessed one, in an adequate way, that we aren't being counseled correctly when we hold justice as a greater value than injustice. So we've switched the argument to a way. Now, the question of just now, the argument is, prove it to me that what's better, justice or injustice, right? Counsel that hold justice that is even greater value than that is even greater value than injustice. And how, he said, am I going to persuade you? If you are not persuaded by the things I was saying just now, what more am I going to do for you? Or shall I bring the argument and spoon feed it to your soul? By Zeus, I said, not that, not you. First, stick to whatever you say, or if you change them, make the change openly and don't mislead us. But you see what you're doing now, Thrasymachus, because we still need to examine the things you said before. That after first defining the true doctor, you later suppose that there was no longer a need to be on guard in the precise way about the true shepherd. But imagine that to the extent that he is a shepherd, he fattens up the sheep, not looking toward what is best for the sheep, but like someone of a banquet about to be feasted, towards a good meal, or else towards turning a profit. like a moneymaker instead of a shepherd. But surely nothing is of concern to the art of shepherding other than to know how to provide what is best for what is best for that which best for that over which it is appointed, since it's no doubt sufficiently provided for by that the thing pertains to the art itself will be best so long as it lacks nothing of being the art of shepherding. That's why I suppose just now that it was necessary for us to agree about every ruling office. So the extent that the ruling office considers what is best to know, for no one, for no other things than the ones that ruled over and cared for. In other words, what is best for no other thing than the one that ruled over and cared for, both in political and private rule. And do you imagine that the rulers in cities, the ones who are truly our rulers, rule willingly? I don't imagine it by Zeus. I know it well. Then what about the other kind of rule, Thrasymachus? I said, don't you realize that that no one willingly desires to rule, but people demand wages on the grounds that there won't be any benefit to them from ruling, only ones to the ones that are ruled? Because tell me this much: don't we claim, no doubt, that each of the arts is different in each case in this respect, and in different and having different power? And so that we may get a conclusion, blessed one, don't answer contrary to your opinion. There are indeed different in that respect, he said. Then does each of these also furnish us with some benefit that is particular to it and shared by them all, such as health with the medical art, safety and in helmsmanship, and so on with others? Well, certainly. So then, wages too with wage earning art, because that's its power, or you call the medical art or the helmsman art the same. Or if you in fact want to distinguish them with precision and set down for our principle, even if someone becomes healthy as a helmsman because of the advantageous of him to sail on the sea, or do you any more on the account of his skill, the medical art? Of course not, I said. Nor I imagine. Do you call the art of wage earning the art of the medical art? Nor do I imagine. Do you call the wage earning art medical, even if someone earns wages getting healthy? Of course not. And what about the medical art? Even when one heals someone who earns wages, do you call is skill a wage earning art? No. Didn't we agree that the benefit of each art is particular to it? And so be it, he said. Therefore, it's clear that whatever sort of benefit, what sort of benefit all skilled workmen benefit is by common. They get that benefit from using an additional something that is the same, shared by them in common. It seems like that, he said. Then we are saying that the wages the skilled workmen gain for their benefit come to them from their additional use of the wage earning art. He said so grudgingly. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Therefore, it is not from his own art that this benefit, that of getting wages, belongs to each of them, but from the one considered, but the one is required to consider it with precision. The medical art produces health, the mercenary art wages, the house building art produces house, the mercenary art produces along with producing wage produces it along with it produces wages, and this way all the other arts each works its own with benefit over which it works is over it's what's important, and if there were no wages attached to it, is there benefit that the workman would get from his art? It doesn't appear so, he says. And he does, and does he produce a benefit even on the occasion when he works for free? I imagine so. Then Thrasymachus, this is obvious that no art nor any ruling function provides for its own benefit, but the very thing that we've been saying for so long. Um, s- uh, um, it provides for and commands the benefit of the one ruled, considering the benefit, considering the benefit of the weaker one and not the stronger. For this reason, Thrasymachus, my friend, that I was also saying just now that no one willingly desires to rule and deal with strengthening out other people's troubles, but people demand wages because the one who is doing to who is going to do beautiful job by art never does what's best for himself or commands it when he's commanding it in accord to his art, but only for the one ruled, on account of which, as is only fitting, there needs to be wages for those who are willing to be who are to be willing to rule, either money, honor, or penalty if one does not rule, or a penalty. In other words, there would have to be money for this. In other words, you have to force the person to rule. He has to be. In other words, the ruler doesn't really want to rule. He's going to be forced to. And this is where you interrupt. This is where Glaucon interrupts, and I'll end this thing. This is the interruption where Glaucon comes in, right? And this is the interruption. This is Glaucon interruption. It's a short interruption, but we're going to end here. Okay, we'll take care. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. And when I see them, I will answer them. If you have any, uh, um, if you like the video, like it, share it with your friends, share it on social media, get it out there. If you didn't like it, okay, you can say don't like, but explain why. Explain what's wrong, and maybe I can learn this. Maybe I can learn in that sense. If you want to follow me on social media, the links are below. You can also follow my academic links, the social academic links, and social media, so academic social media things, but my scholarship and research for those who are interested. Um, Another thing is, for those of you who want to help what I do, you can do so. The links are below to Patreon and Subscribe Star. You can become a pay, contribute these things. I'm not going to get into the argument about this. There's not many people doing it. I understand. But you're saying, oh, you're doing it for free anyways. Why do we do this? Okay, whatever. The other way you can do it is by buy one of my books. The books are listed below. Available for Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other booksellers. If you're going to want to help me direct, the book that you should buy from the Lulu the book published by Lulu, you should buy by Lulu, because if you buy it by Lulu, right, if you buy it by this Amazon or the publishers, they'll make a profit. If you buy it by Lulu, I get the profit that they make. So if you want to help me, that's the way to do it. Okay, that's it. We got two more of these to do, and that's it. Okay, take care. Bye bye. Have a good day.